Hello everybody and welcome back to Ready Steady Play, and today we're going to be reviewing Lacrimosa because we've played it. And this is a Essen 22 release from Devir Games, and this review copy was kindly given to us by Cosmos Games on behalf of Devir. So thanks to both of those publishers for sorting us out with a review copy. We had the chance to play it at Essen, and we've since played it a bunch of times, and now we're going to talk about it. We've got the designers Gerard Ashini and Ferran Renalius. They are co-designers on this product. They've also co-designed two other games. They've co-designed On the Origin of Species, which is a 2019 release, and the 1998 ISS, which is the International Space Station, a game about the space station. And that's from 2022. Actually, quite a lot of their releases are from 2022. Ferran also has Take a Seat, which Chris picked up at Essen 22, actually, which is a game about the theater, and Insecta, The Ladies of Entomology, another 22 release. So fairly newcomers on the scene in terms of their design chops. So we'll be keen to see how they put those to work in Lacrimosa. And then we've also got the artists, Jared Blando and Enrique Corominas. Now, Jared Blando is a old school board game designer, artist, I can only assume, because he's credited on a lot of games. He's also credited on Cloudspire and some of the Too Many Bones products, which are of course Chip Theory games, and they have excellent artwork. And he's also credited on Mosaic, which is a recent civ building game from Glendrover, and Legacy of Dragonholt as well, which doesn't have much art, but the art it does have is very good. And finally, he's credited on a lot of things, but I noticed he's also credited, I think this might even be his first, on 1830 Railways and Robber Barons, which is a 1986 game and widely credited or considered to be the first 18XX game, so the sort of beginning of that genre. So that's a lot of fun to sort of see his work on this, and the artwork in this game is excellent, which we'll talk about later, or maybe we'll just show you. You can see for yourself. But that's the stats there, and we're going to give our opinions on the game. But spoiler alert, we think it's a bit good. It is a Euro-style competitive game. Each player, it's 1 to 4 players. Each player is playing to win the most victory points over the course of 5 eras. It's most points after 5 rounds. You'll earn a lot of your points during the game and some of your points at the end of the game. It's probably about 50-50. Now, the game is a 3.12 on BGG, which makes it solidly in the middleweight category, although of the votes, it did lean slightly more into the heavy middle vote. I think that's pretty fair. I think that the game is fairly straightforward to parse once you've learned the rules. I think that if you're not familiar with the hobby, this is going to feel like a big step up. But if you're familiar with the hobby, you're going to be fine with this. A lot of it is just repeating the same actions over and over again. So once you've seen the 5 different actions and you sort of understand how it functions, you won't have any trouble parsing it. Now, working out a good strategy is a different matter entirely. So we've got 30 minutes to teach, I reckon, from scratch. 30 minutes to teach, and probably about 30 to 40 minutes per player to play. And with that, I'm going to now take a bit of a deeper look into the game and at the game board. So we're going to go over those rules, bit of a rules overview for you so you understand what the game's about and what's going on. But if you want to skip straight to the review, you can find the chapters in the description down below. Hello, Michael. Thank you for joining me for this review of Lacrimosa.
Hello. How you doing?
Yeah, not
Everyone
too bad.
is well?
Thanks. Exactly. And we are bringing you now this game, and I'm going to give you guys an overview of how it works. And Michael's here to ask any questions in case I miss something. So, as you can see, we've got a main game board here, a big game board. I've got one player area set up, but each player would have a player area like this set up as well. We've got over here, so these are the different currencies that you're going to be using as you play the game. Ultimately, the game is about Mozart's lost final piece of work, and I'm not going to talk about the theme too much because I'm a bit of an ignoramus. But it is essentially a piece of music that was being written, a requiem, that was being written when he passed away. And so his wife hired other composers to finish the music. And it's a bit unclear who contributed, how much they contributed, and how much was written by Mozart and all of those things. So the game is kind of modeling this sort of final days of Mozart's life and the finishing of this Requiem by other composers. It's a little bit anachronistic because Mozart's here on the board. He's going to travel around Europe here, going to various different places. And also we've got the Requiem down here, and we're going to fill in spots on this Requiem as we go along. And there's 2 composers at the bottom here who are contributing to it, who are going to give us rewards as we fill this in. And you want to contribute to the Requiem because this is going to be a lot of endgame scoring is going to come from down here. So you're going to score endgame points for all of these areas here, and you're also going to score points for some of the tiles that you can pick up here, the big ones that are available as you travel around Europe. And that's where most of your endgame scoring is going to come from. The rest of the points you'll largely earn during the game. So there are 4 turns in an age, each represented by a column here on your player board. And a player will have a hand of 4 cards. And on their turn, they'll pick 2 cards from their hand to play. And they'll slot 1 into the top here, which represents the action they'll do on their turn. And these cards at the bottom that you slot down here will represent an income you'll get at the end of the round. So as you go through your deck of action cards here, you must decide which ones you're going to use for actions and which ones you're going to play for income. There are 9 cards in your deck, and you'll only ever have 9 cards, but you'll have opportunities to remove cards from your deck and replace them with better versions. Once you've taken 4 turns and played out the entire deck bar 1 card, which you can save in your hand for next time, then you will end the age. And this will have 2 effects. It will change the cards that are available here, which inform this marketplace along the top. And then you'll also be able to replenish some tiles that have been used down here as well. And so what we've got here is some extra tiles for randomized setup as we go through all 5 ages. At the end of the 5th age, we'll do final scoring, and that will be the end of the game. And there are two kinds of cards that you can purchase from the marketplace up here. There are action cards that'll go into your deck and improve your actions. And there are also what are called opuses, which are like passive cards that sit near your player board and can be used to generate bonuses or points. And the opuses are really important. You can collect different ones for a little set collecting function as well. So there are 5 actions available in the game. The memory action allows you to purchase additional action cards from the marketplace. The scribe action allows you to purchase opus cards from the marketplace. The performance action allows you to perform those opuses for benefits or else sell them for money. There's also the Requiem action here, which allows you to play into the Requiem, and I'll talk a bit about that in a minute, because that's a very interesting part of the game. And there's the travel action, and this is how Mozart's going to travel around Europe. So you get to move the Mozart piece, and you get to take actions where he lands. Now, as you're committing to these actions, you'll need these different currencies. You've got ducats here in denominations of 1 and 5, and you've also got what are called story points, which come in the form of composition, talent, and travel. Now these counters are also reflected over here on your player board as well. You've got 1 track for each. And each turn you'll get a little bit of income that you can track over here, up to 4 in each resource line. But you might also get these counters, which are functionally better. They're the same resource. You can spend them from either position, but these ones you can hold between rounds. Whereas all of these you'll lose if you don't spend them. So there's this sort of little function here where the resources, you want to use them to do things or you're going to lose them. You'll also start the game with a lot of money, and then you'll probably find for the rest of the game you're broke and upset.
Like a true artiste.
Exactly, just like a real artist. So we've also got over here a little income track, which you can improve, and this is going to improve your income at the end of each round. But there are also things that cost income itself, which moves you back down the track. So it's worthwhile moving up this track for various different reasons. But it's hard to do. This is the Requiem track here, and this is like a territory control situation. So what you've got going on here are these different instruments in each section of the Requiem, and you'll be able to play onto these instruments in a miniature territory control game. There are some spots that have been blocked off, and this is part of a randomized setup. I've actually blocked quite a lot of spots off here because I've set up for a 2-player game, but you'd block off fewer the more players you had. But I think you'll always block off at least 1. And so when you take this Requiem action, you get to go over to your player board and you get to take an instrument matching the spot you're playing to, and you take your little token here and you put it out into the Requiem. And when you put it out here, you're going to pick the quaver side or the semi-quaver side, which corresponds to one of the two composers down here. So we happen to have Submaier and Frey Sadler. Again, I apologize for pronunciation. But there are 4 available in the game, so we've just taken 2 here, but there are another 2, and you can use them in any combination that you want, so there's a bit of replayability there. And you pick the composer you want to back, and then you put your token on that composer's side into the matching instrument spot. And that has secured you 1 position here. And when we get to endgame scoring, you'll see there's a 3 and a 1 down here. Whoever owns the majority position here will get 3 points per note of support. So for our example, Stubmaier has 1 because he's got 2 support against Freystadler's 1. This means that the yellow player will get 6 points, 3 for each piece, and the blue player will get 1 point, 1 for their blue piece. This can of course be divided up. In this example, for some reason, yellow decided to stop backing Freysadler and back Stubmaier. So now it's going to be 4 for yellow and 3 for blue. So this little territory control game will be resolved for each section, and it's really interesting, this back and forth. And what makes it more interesting is yellow might have done this because they want a different composer token. So you'll see that each section has composer tokens beneath, and they don't always match in number. And these are passive abilities, and when you play your note onto the board, you're going to take a composer token here and pop it out over here onto your board, generating a list of passive actions or one-off benefits as you claim these tokens. So they've got a cost on them as well, which is in the upper left there, and you can see this costs just 1 inscription resource, but they'll get more expensive as you move towards the end of the Requiem here. So they get more expensive as you go and more powerful. They also get more expensive as you go down the stack, so the top one is cheaper than the one below it. And these will be restricted based on player count as well. I've just put them all out here, but there'll be fewer of them. So this is a really interesting sort of thing, and they told us at Essen, like, don't ignore this. Although I think there might be a strategy where you could do quite well if you don't play into it much. We'll see. Depends on player count, I think. The more players there are, the more you probably can not the less you would be able to focus on this without being locked out. In a 2-player game, you probably need to be in here a lot. And then there's also Mozart travels around Europe. We've got these roads traveling around Europe with costs on. You're going to have to pay this money to move Mozart. So this is 1 movement point, so you can move him to 1 city. As these cards improve, you'll find cards with multiple carriages, and that means you can move him more than once. You'll see as well that these cities he moves through have a cost on the left in travel points. So this is the red currency that you can spend here to gain the benefit on the right. So here we would spend 1 travel point to gain 3 travel points.
Just a quick question there. Is it you spend one of the you would spend one of your travel points there to get 3 travel tokens?
So this gives you 3 counters, but this could be either.
Yes. Cool.
And you can actually choose not to move Mozart as well. You could use the carriage to activate him, and then he could stay here, and you could simply use this ability here in Salzburg. So once the token is resolved, it is removed, and nobody else can have that power. But if you had 2 carriages on your action here, so if we had a better version of this card, we could actually stop off in here, use that power, and then move somewhere else, and stop off in here, and use that power as well. And of course, there's a nice mechanism as well, where at the end of the round, any of these that are not picked are flipped over to a better side to make them more enticing. However, there's no third side. If they're not picked again, then they're just sad. So I missed this during the explanation, but when Mozart travels, you can actually travel any number of cities. You just have to pay the total cost shown on all the roads. So Mozart could theoretically travel to any city on the board from his current position, but the cost would be cumulative and get very expensive pretty quickly. So we've got here a Opus card, and this is another major part of the game. You can purchase these from the marketplace, and you pay a cost shown up here as well as a cost printed on the board based on the position of the card. I'll show you in a minute. But this costs 1 talent, 1 money, and you immediately get 3 points. Then it goes and sits next to your player board here, and you have the following functions on the bottom. So you can perform this piece of music for 1 talent point when you play this action, and then you get 0 money. So that's probably not worth doing. However, you can also sell it for a talent point, and that gets you 0 on the inventory track and 2 points. So all of these cards, Opus cards, are placed further down like this, so you can see that they've got an additional cost above them. The action cards are placed up like this, and they have a different cost below them. These get more expensive as you go along the left of the marketplace here, so you can see they're relatively affordable here, and then the ones right at the end are the most expensive. We've only actually had 2 action cards come out here, and the rest are all Opuses, but when one is bought, everything drops to the right and is refilled from the stack here. Now, when we get to the end of the age, there's a first player marker, which is a musical tine that you pass around at the end of every round. So between
it's a tuning fork, isn't it?
A tuning fork, exactly. So we have a maintenance phase between main phases. So the main phase is your actions, and then there's a maintenance phase where you get income and things, and the first player changes. And one of the things we're going to do is score this age tile here, which is the age 1 scoring tile, and there's 3 of these for each age. So this is going to tell you for each travel action you took this age, you can have 2 money. What's nice about this is that all of your actions are recorded up here, so you can just look and see how many carriages there are and count those up and take that money. Once this is resolved, it's set to one side, and then we're going to go here and we're going to remove all the remaining Era 1 cards. We're going to remove those as well, and this reveals the Era 2 bonus tile. So this is going to give you a new scoring condition, and it's going to go over here. Now this one also happens to be giving us money, but again, these are randomized from a set of 3. And then we've got the Era 2 cards in here, which are just more powerful Opuses and more powerful actions. And you can see they've got a 2 in the center as well. So all of these would be wiped off, or at least most of them would be wiped off and replaced with Era 2, Age 2 cards. And I guess the last thing I'd mention are these big tiles. These are tiles that you can pick up when you're traveling with Mozart, but they're slightly different. They're to the other tiles. They have this scoring condition on the bottom. So this one is saying when you pay, you can pay 2 to collect it, you gain 2 money, and then additionally, at the end of the game, if you have a card from age 2, a card from age 3, and a card from age 4 in your deck, 5 points for you. You cannot repeat this, so it's just a one-off condition that you fulfill, and cards that are used to fill the condition on this tile cannot be used to fulfill other conditions. So that is how those work. So you can collect a bunch of those. There's another one here that's more of the same kind of thing. So this one wants you to play into different sections of the Requiem, for example. You've got points for that.
Is there one maybe on different Opuses?
Yeah. So this one's different instruments in the Requiem. And here's one that wants you to acquire different Opus cards. So you still have to have them at the end of the game. And if you've got Opuses with symbols that match these, there's points for you there. You can see here the 2 Opuses we might use to fulfill that endgame scoring condition. So I think that's sort of the rules overview. And the first question on my list here, Michael, is do we think that this is a thematic game? Now, which is an interesting question. I think I actually prefer to start with, do we like this game?
I'll keep it very simple and brief. Yes.
Yes.
I do. I think it's a really good game. And I think it's a really good game for a variety of different reasons. One, I think people will be quite pleasantly surprised at how easy it is to pass this, to pick it up, because I think you mentioned at the start of the video that just once you kind of know sort of like the general gist of the things that you can do in your turn, it's just very much a rinse and repeat for the next 5 rounds, and then the skill comes from like looking and seeing what's coming out on the board and trying to develop a strategy, which is the interesting part of it, and how everyone plays it differently. But actually learning the game and then just being able to pick it up is actually very very quick and quite easy compared to other games out there, which might be contradict if you were to just look at this on a board and think, oh blimey, this looks incredibly complex, when actually it isn't. It's actually a nice meaty puzzle for not too much investment in learning. So I think it's actually a really good game for that. It's quite accessible for people.
Yeah, and I would definitely say it's accessible for hobbyists, and I think that, you know, people who aren't in the hobby would I think there's a few little things you have to be very careful of. For example, managing your deck over here, remembering that opuses aren't in your deck, just sort of things like that we would instinctively find very straightforward as people who are familiar with the hobby and how cards are handled and things like that. Which might be a little bit more complex. But I think the biggest barrier to entry for this actually would be, I think, how do I do well? Like, I think there's not a lot of like really low level heuristics for how to score points. And people could find themselves sort of baffled at the start, like, how do I do well? And easily go bankrupt or make a bunch of action card purposes without really thinking about what they're doing and get into trouble that way.
I understood that. I think if I was playing with someone like that, they were wanting to play it, I think I would just tell them to concentrate on the Requiem at the bottom on their first game. It's like, that's something that's quite simple and easy to follow, I think. If you were a bit worried about them feeling a bit lost, maybe on their first attempt.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you wanted to make this more accessible, just say focus on the Requiem, because the tokens in here, they're going to get you points, they're going to get you passive abilities. You can't really go wrong with that. And I think that I think there is enough here for more experienced hobby gamers to really get their teeth into. It's not really the kind of Euro game that explodes with technical combos. You know, you're not like building combos, or, you know, even though you're improving your action cards, it's not really the main. I mean, it's important to do, but really it's actually a game of timing. Like, the game here has like really tight timing considerations, particularly around the Requiem, as these spots fill up, you know.
Absolutely.
And you only have 4 actions around. It's just not enough. And so it's really, I think a good Euro has you worried about whether you take the optimal move and risk losing something that you want, or do you take a suboptimal move to make sure you get in where you want to get in. And I think that's what you want to see from, you know, Euro games that aren't offering sort of points bonanzas, giant combos or tableaus to build or something to construct like that. And this doesn't offer that. This is absolutely tight timing. You know, is Mozart going to move away from where you want him? Is someone going to take your spots down here? You know, is someone going to buy that opus with the symbol you need, or the action card that you want? You know, or are you going to try to buy time and wait for these to fall down and get cheaper so you can afford them, and then someone else buys it anyway? So that's all really well done here. And, you know, actually using an action to upgrade a card is also excruciating, because it means you're not doing something else.
You're absolutely right. I felt at times with this, it's like, am I doing the right thing here? I felt at times I was like, I've wasted some moves here, it's very easy to fall into that trap of, I've wasted the 3 turns here, and all of a sudden you feel like you're on the back foot, and it's like, oh no, that person is now taking the card I want, and if I'd not faffed around with doing this thing, then I would have had that 1 turn earlier, and also then you're like, oh, I regret my life choices. But I think you're absolutely right in the fact that, because it isn't this points bonanza. I don't think there's this in Euros. There's usually the points going all around the edge, and you go to the 100 and 200 tokens it's around the edge, and it's like, you're never going to get that level, are you, with this?
Having said that, the scoring does go up to scoreboard plus 100 over here.
Oh, maybe that was just my memory of it not being very good.
No, but what I mean by points bonanza really is not like how high the numbers go. It's more how many.
Yes.
Yeah. How many are you going to score from any given thing at any given time? So you're not looking for combos to build up for. I mean, you know, obviously, getting in, there is some scope for efficiency here, efficiency making. Of course, it's a Euro game, so you want to be winning down here in the areas that say match the tiles that you've claimed, right? But that's about as technical as the combos are going to get in this game. It's not a terraforming Mars or an underwater cities or an Everdell or anything like that.
I agree, because you can't. For example, in the end game scoring, you've got to use different cards for different of those bigger tiles that you get from the middle. You can't use the same card twice, and that's all about. Like, if you could use the same card, then you could be using all kinds of combos and things like that. So, it's that's what I was meaning as well. I suppose, yes, you probably can get up to 100, but what I mean is you can't, like, I was agreeing with you, and these things that all of a sudden can double and triple, and all of a sudden you've got this proper combo that sends you flying into the stratosphere.
It just doesn't happen. But it's so it's a bit more of a delicate game than that. But it's very.
I kind of like that. I think it lends into the theme.
Okay.
It just, like, you're having to work hard. It's like these things don't come across. You don't create a requiem overnight. It's like it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of effort, and it's.
Michael, I've written many requiems, and I was very quick.
Exactly. And I think that lends into this, that you can't just then go off. You're actually having to take your time to get to these points, and think smartly about how you're going to do that to then be able to get to the end of the game with this requiem completed, and it's not something that's you've just been able to pass and then go off and get all these cheap combos kind of thing. You've had to really think about it, and as I say, I think that leans into the theme of creating this masterpiece. I kind of like that, how it's
little attention to minute details.
Yeah,
and it's it's not a deck builder either. It's sort of incremental action improvement. So that fits in with this sort of attention to small improvements rather than sort of major advancements at any given moment. You have to pay a lot of attention to the income and where you're going to get your resources from as well. Instinctively you get them each round, but you have to keep track of what you're going to get. Also, money is really important, and where you're going to get money from is a big important consideration. And of course, I'm
just going to agree with you, dude. I was just going to say money is a bit of a killer in this. So you've got to really concentrate on it.
Yeah, and the game teases you as well by giving you these exchange rates over here. So you can skip an action to take money equal to the current age. You can take 3 coins and buy a single counter or 1 counter and exchange it for a coin. All of which are miserable exchange rates, and
miserable.
The game is just poking you and saying, "Hey, do you want to make sure you do that before someone else? Well, then you can really pay for it."
I don't think that's ever worth it.
It might be if someone's going to get that last spot Agnus Day, and you're like, "No, I want that. I need that."
It's so crippling, though, to cancel a turn to do that. It's particularly if you've got so limited turns to begin with.
Canceling an action is pretty rough. So I think that it's low luck. There's very little luck. The luck is largely in what tiles come out, what cards come out, and the shuffling of your deck between rounds. That's pretty much it. So it's largely system management. You're engaging with the systems. The turns are relatively quick. You're just playing 2 cards. So that was really nice. I do appreciate it when there's low downtime.
I was just going to say, I don't remember feeling that we were sat there waiting for hours, waiting for someone to take their turn, and you were sort of like going off into your own little world trying to wait for people. It's like I found it relatively, even though you were having to think and because each action is so limited, and you've got to really think about it so you don't end up screwing yourself over. I don't remember feeling people were taking a long time to do that. I felt it was just about right.
No, there's generally enough to think about between turns to tide you over to your next turn, because turns are relatively clipped. Because we played it at 4, and that would be where the cracks in the downtime would show, and actually they've been utterly fine. And there is a nice amount of player interaction as well, because you care about what people are buying from. I mean, and this is Euro player interaction, right? We're not choosing who to attack or who to invade or who to get with the gotcha card. There's none of that. But we're paying attention to what people are buying from up here, which is, you know, a nice thing to be sort of concerned with. We're paying attention to what people are picking up down here, which is nice, and we're paying attention to what people are putting out here, which is very important. So all of that's really nice to keep you engaged as well with what people are doing on their turn. Speaking of the theme as well, actually, the art is also really, really nice. It's really well presented. I think that this game, to me, it doesn't look dry or boring. It's also brown enough to appeal to the purists, you know? Nobody's going to be complaining that they can't read the board or it's too shiny or colorful to see what's going on. So I just think that, you know, it's a testament to the two artists that this is so well done and just looks really, really nice.
It does look really nice. It looks very smart, very polished, very, very on point with the theme. You could imagine yourself sat around a table if this board game was out in when Mozart was alive. Is it like 70? God, apologies, I should know this, but I don't know if it was like the 18th century or something like that. I don't feel that this would look out of place, this imagery, if you were sat around a table playing it in the 1800s.
The iconography is great. The iconography is generally very straightforward and simple. There are a few cases where we have to look up the passive tiles or things, what they do, but it's all fairly clear in the rule book. The setup time is a little bit onerous, but it's not too bad. Same with the pack-away time, I guess. It doesn't come with an insert, so you can see I've purchased a wooden one, just because it is a bit of a bear to set up otherwise. But you know, it's not massive. It's not terrible. It's just a little on the wrong side of the average, right? In terms of the sort of the setup and the teardown time. But the one thing I would say is that the rule book is not well laid out. The rule book is not a very particularly good document, so that's a bit of a shame.
You've got experience with that one.
Yeah, I read an awful lot of rule books, and you know, there are many ways to do them. I still like the reference document as its own thing a lot. You know, so like Fantasy Flight used to do with their learn to play document, and then their reference document, where it's just, you know, a reference menu of the tiles, or like some Euro games give everybody a little reference menu with everything in it. And I found this game it's got a very like sort of odd layout to the rule book, where they sort of explain an overview of the rules and then go into like a deep dive of the rules section, and it just means that you're checking both sections to find clarifications on what you need. So it's a bit of a pain. I can see what they're trying to do, but I don't think it's working. For maybe if you were just to sit down and read through it, but not if you want to use it as a reference tool during the game.
Yeah.
But you know, that's a relatively minor criticism of what is otherwise, you know, excellently good fun, and a fairly easy game to recommend, I think, because
I agree. Yes, absolutely.
You know, it doesn't take it's you know, it's an evening game, sure, but it doesn't outstay its welcome, and it's not too bad. You know,
I think that's a really good way to say it. Yes, it doesn't outstay its welcome. I feel like you can get through it. Yeah, I feel like it's just the right length. It's like you feel like you've enjoyed yourself, you've had a nice evening's entertainment, but you've not felt like it's a hard slog. It's not felt like you're wiped out by the end of it, and it's got you wanting to come back again to see how you might do it a second time or a third time. I think
those 4 actions go by so fast.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're just done. I'm hard pressed to figure out a sort of a standout mechanism here. I like the combination of the sort of little bits of territory control here, and how these are tied into the passive abilities to give it a bit more of a sort of a nuance of consideration down here. Like what do you want to do? You want to compete? Which area do you want to compete in? Do you want to buy these tiles? You actually have to buy a tile to play in here. So, you know, if you can't afford a tile, then you can't play into these areas. And so you're always thinking about that as well, but you want those passive benefits too. And you want to pick one composer really to sort of stick with throughout, or you just want to jump on whoever's winning already. But those tiles are going to be getting more expensive because people have already played there. And so that's a really sort of nice set of subtleties to what is otherwise effectively area majority. And I like the sort of the action selection here. You've always got 4 cards in hand, so at the end of your turn you've played 2, you draw 2 more as you make your way through the deck of 9 cards. And when you buy a new card, you ditch the one at the bottom here and replace it with the new card you've just bought. So it's just this really nice sort of action upgrade kind of mechanism. I like how you can maybe ditch one action card to get a duplicate of something else, so you can sort of go hard into one line if you want to. I don't know if there's how much benefit there is to that or how necessary it is, but I like that you can do it, and it's interesting. I like how you could actually probably focus quite hard on the opuses and just making money doing that and ignoring a lot of other stuff. That's sort of interesting. I hope that the strategies are as diverse as they appear after a few plays, because that's awesome. And it gives it more replayability, because I think that's the one thing I guess I would say is that there is a fair amount of randomization to the setup. For example, these little spots here that are blocked, that's randomized. The composers, there are 4. They can be used in any combination of 2. You've got the randomized end of age scoring tiles here. You've got you're not going to see all of the age cards each age either, typically. So that's randomized. These tiles here are randomized. These ones here are shuffled and randomized. And, they're replaced every age. But, ultimately, I don't think it's going to feel like a massively different game each time. So you're sort of just discovering the slight different nuances of the setup and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I think, if you want some sort of wildly variable puzzle to solve each time, you're probably not going to get it. But it is solid enough and enjoyable enough, and just sits in this nice niche of sort of like middleweight but very compelling and reasonable length. So I think it's kind of got a really solid position there in a collection. And I would be interested in checking out the solo mode. I haven't had a chance to play the solo mode, but it looks like the kind of solo mode I would enjoy, which is to say some cards and things like that, rather than flowcharts or anything more complex. Flip a card, take out some actions, and then try to beat a high score. Mm-hmm. The Mark covered solo mode on Not Board Gaming, so you can always check that out if you have any more questions about it. Mm-hmm. But other than that, Michael, anything you want to say on Lacrimosa as we wind down?
There's not many of these that I play and automatically think I enjoyed that, I would play that again. Like straight away. Normally I have to think about it, or normally I have to be like, oh, I can see why someone would like that. But maybe not for me or anything like that. But I do remember playing this, and I do remember seeing it at Essen, and I think for a variety of different reasons, it ticked a lot of boxes. I think it brings a lot of I can imagine a lot of people liking this and want the replayability of it is, whilst you say maybe not massively varied, I think it's varied enough to keep it coming back to the table and for enjoyment of people. So for me personally, I would definitely, I like the theme, I like the art, and I would happily play it again, which I think is a good testament.
Absolutely. Well, there you go then. And just for clarity, you said I don't play many of these. Do you mean middleweight Euro games, or do you mean like board games?
I mean, that's incredibly helpful. These, I mean, board games in general.
That's not true. He plays a fair amount of board games. You're just about to go to a board game convention.
I am.
But I think with that, we'll call that a review. If you have any questions about the game, please do leave them in the comments down below. I'll do my best to answer them. If you've enjoyed this review and you think it's added some value, please consider checking us out on Patreon. That's how we keep the show running. And in the meantime, here's a big thank you to all the Patreons who support the show.